Wilson, Mr. Johnson are clueless on the changes, what's wrong with the old ordinance, why we're changing it, and how we're enforcing it.
Yeah, please.
Okay, well, I'll start from the beginning. Most of the sign ordinances throughout the state are unconstitutional for one reason or another, and Leesburg and the counties were no exception to that. So, working with the county, this came to light that they needed to change their ordinance because there were some issues in it which made it illegal, basically. And when an ordinance is illegal, sign companies have challenged it in the past, and what would happen in that case is that a judge will often throw out the entire sign ordinance because something is wrong with it, and that way you guys, or a government then, would end up with no sign ordinance, and companies could do whatever they wanted to. So you all recognize this and put a moratorium on new sign applications. In that time that the moratorium is in effect, we have worked on this draft sign ordinance. If you're interested in some of the specifics of what was wrong with your sign ordinance, we can go into that. But if you want to just move into what we're proposing now, that's up to you all.
I want the specifics.
Just give one.
Well, one of the issues was that you cannot distinguish between on-site and off-site signs. Old ordinances would say off-site signs are allowed in certain zoning districts, and off-site signs generally are the same thing as billboards. So a billboard could be put up, and I'm just,
Yeah.
this doesn't necessarily mean your ordinance said in agricultural zones, but some ordinances would say off-site signs are only allowed in agriculture and C3, something like that. And you cannot distinguish between the two because the only way you can tell if a sign is off-site or on-site is by reading it. You have to read it to know what the message is. And courts have ruled that if you have to read it, then you're judging what it says, and that's it's unconstitutional under the First Amendment. It's limiting free speech. Someone should be able to say the same thing on their site as they can off their site. So your ordinance distinguished between the two, that was not allowed. A lot of older ordinances, including yours, also had issues with political signs. Same sort of thing. It would say that a political sign in reference to a specific race could only go up a month or two before the election, and it had to be down a week or two afterwards. If someone wants to have a sign every day of the year in their front yard that, vote for Jimmy Carter, that they should be allowed to. It's free speech. You can limit some things about sign ordinances. You can't limit what people say unless it's lewd or something along those lines. Obscene. It can be illegal to say certain things, but other things are free speech. You can limit the size of a sign. You can limit whether it's lit. You can limit, I think, let's see. I think size and lighting are really the only things you can limit. What's that?
Anything but what is said on the sign.
Right. Basically anything but what it says. So, and people have to be allowed to have signs. So even in residential areas, people have to be allowed to have signs. And oftentimes, just to distinguish a little bit, private subdivisions that have covenants can exclude signs. That's their right based on people buying in and signing the covenants. So there are some instances where signs can be excluded, but in general, even residential areas have to be allowed to have signs. You can limit what size they are and that sort of thing, how many, which we've done in this ordinance.
How about if you had a building, instead of putting a sign out there, you paint it all over?
That's fine to some extent as well. The ordinance puts a cap on the size of a sign like that. So you can regulate the size of those signs, but you can't tell someone they can't do it, basically. So those are a couple areas that your sign ordinance failed, like other ones have, Lee counties did, and most all the ordinances really throughout the state have not been updated. The court cases that have changed the way the law looks at sign ordinances were in the late 1990s, and a lot of governments just haven't changed their ordinances. And typically, unless there's someone pushing to change it because they know it's illegal or you get sued, governments just leave it alone generally.
And that's where we were. They were putting, like, the gas stations want to put the LED sign up, and that was or was not against the sign ordinance, and that's where it came up with.
Yeah, there were some some cases that came up in the past year that brought the issue of sign ordinances to the discussion. And at that point, I recognized that Lee counties needed some work, and we didn't want to get into where they would have to get rid of their sign ordinance and allow anything. And there's a new billboard being put up near the new Publix, which will be a LED electronic billboard. And that was kind of maybe the issue that everyone realized, okay, we need to do something about this now, so we can control these in the future. So what we've done to start off with is we have taken an ordinance that is used by some other local governments around the state. It was developed by one of the preeminent land use attorneys in the state. So it hasn't been legally challenged at this point. And I feel confident that everything in it is up to what is currently the legal standard. Now, cities like Albany, Valdosta, and Columbus have used either elements or most of what this started off as. This has been gone over several times, and we tailored it to Lee County. Now we're trying to work with you all to tailor it to Leesburg, because certainly Leesburg is going to have some different needs than Lee County does. And so some of the things that would be different in general, perhaps, would be the size of signs, because Lee County, a lot of roadways in Lee County where there's commercial activity are higher speed limits than what you have. So in general, businesses want larger signs with higher speed limits so they can make sure that people have the time to read them. So that would be one thing that you would want to consider in looking through this document, if the sizes listed here are too big or if they're just right. We'll get to the most controversial aspect of it in a second, but another potentially controversial issue, there's more and more businesses want to have electronic signs that flash or change or move, that can be computer controlled, so they don't buy a paper sign or a painted sign that says one thing, they paid for it, and that's all it will ever say. They want a sign that they can change, they can put it on their computer program, and it will change frequently. Now there's two general types of these. There's billboards, which on, what is it, Jefferson, and coming out of Albany, there's one, and there's going to be one in Lee County soon. There's one near the Toyota dealer. Those are lit signs that are billboard size.
The digital?
The digital ones, right. The other side of that are smaller signs that businesses use that can be things like the barber shop over here, but if you've been outside of the area and seen like Sonic or Walgreens, CVS drugstores have them. They're smaller signs, but they have scrolling words. McDonald's uses them. They'll change what their special is or something like that. And most businesses, it seems nowadays, when they're rehabbing their business and updating, they want one of these electronic flashing LED signs. And so we have in the ordinance, and we're on Lee County, we're looking at a larger scale, but we have put limits on where billboards can go, because it's seen as a good way to, or a legal way to regulate them based on how close they can be to one another. Because you don't necessarily, I mean, it's a community decision, you don't necessarily want them just one after another like you're driving down I-75. So it's legal for local governments to say they can only be X amount of feet apart, 2,500 feet apart. I think that's what we said in Lee County. So if you look at the billboards that are there, which are existing legally, we figured out how many billboards could fit in between those based on 2,500 foot spacing. And there's not a lot of room left over for new billboards in Lee County. That would be an issue that, you said there are no billboards in Leesburg?
The Petro's a billboard size, but
Right.
technically it's not a billboard,
Okay.
from what I've been told.
Okay. Well,
It's big.
so I don't think that you can exclude anything really completely, but you can regulate it so it's difficult for it to go somewhere. And that would have to be a decision for you all. Where new billboards could go, what zoning districts. We have put it right now at the heavy commercial and industrial districts. They would be permitted there. I know you do have some of both of those. So those would be areas that billboards could go. We could put a spacing requirement on it to make it difficult for billboards to go, or for you to have more than one or two of them in the whole city.